Oh boy. 1984. A book that everybody loves besides the government. It's kind of crazy that this book was banned in the United States for being communist, but then banned in the USSR for being capitalist. Meanwhile, it's really neither. It's a commentary on totalitarianism. So that just goes to show, both sides don't want you to hear what's in this book. Now, before I preface that, right, I had to say that ban in the U.S. and ban in the USSR, two completely different things. Ban in the U.S. means you don't read it in school, basically. And ban in the USSR means it's completely banned. Like, you cannot get it. No one sells it anywhere. It's like illegal. Yeah, that's a big difference. You can still buy, like, I had the book, like, right here. Yeah, it's not banned. And I do say there are some parts of the book that are not appropriate for children. But, those things can be skipped over. Right. But, anyways, this is going to be, like, well, first of all, I won't say spoilers, okay? There's going to be spoilers in this book. I mean, it came out in, it's the 75th anniversary, so however many years ago that is, the 40s. So, if you haven't read it by now, sorry. But it's going to be a, review and then, analysis of it. So, first off, the story follows a guy named Winston Smith. Winston lives in modern-day London. He lives in England. They live under a dystopian, totalitarian regime known as the Party. The Party is the government in the story. It's headed by a guy named Big Brother, who might not even exist, but we'll get into that. Their governing philosophy is called INSOC, or INSOC. I think it's called INSOC because it stands for English Socialism. So, in the beginning of this book, Winston makes it clear, or Orwell, I should say, makes it clear that Winston is skeptical of the Party. He is against the Party, which is illegal, right? This is illegal for him to have any thoughts against Big Brother, against the government, against the Party. And this is called thought crime. Thought crime is harboring ideas against the Party. And there's people called the thought police that they find out about that you have ideas against the government. If you want to rebel against the Party, if you don't like or agree with everything the Party says, they make you quote-unquote disappear, aka they kill you and they'll torture you. These ideas that Orwell portrays are a common theme in this book. The ideas of thought crime, doublethink, and newspeak. So doublethink is believing two contradictory statements because that's what the Party says, right? I watched a video earlier that used the example of those immigrants are lazy, they're taking all the jobs, right? And those are two contradictory statements, but people believe it to be true, right? How could you be lazy and taking all jobs at the same time, right? That is the big example that Orwell uses in this book. There's a recurring saying in this book that is doublespeak. It opens the book. It's throughout the book all the time. Winston walks around and he sees this on the posters. It says, "War is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength." That itself is doublespeak, right? War is not peace. Freedom is not slavery. And ignorance is not strength. So the Party uses that and those ideas to keep people in line, right? War is peace. They say that to keep people scared, right? And to kind of form a common enemy. I'll go into that a little bit later in this video. But freedom is slavery, right? They try to say that being free in itself is slavery, right? You should only live to serve the Party. That's your main purpose in life, is to serve the Party and be a advocate for the Party. Being your own person, executing your own free will, and doing anything that's not being a good member of the Party is slavery. Which is Like what? And then ignorance is strength, saying that, don't worry about the reasons why. Just listen to whatever we say. Whatever the party says, you believe it. Be ignorant to thinking differently against the party. Which, a lot of people say that this book transcends modern times. There's a lot of themes that you see today, and I actually have a whole different thing for that. So I'll get into that later as well. But so that's doublethink. Is believing two contradictory statements to be true. And people do this in the book because they're afraid of the party. And it's just natural, right? They love the party so much. Then there's newspeak. So, newspeak is a language that is seriously simplified. So, instead of saying good and bad, they say good and ungood, right? When instead of saying, like, that was horrific, they'll say that was ungood double plus, or like plus plus, or ungood plus. And it removes a significant portion of the word. And if the party doesn't want the word to exist, then it won't. And a quote from the book, it says, in newspeak, there's no word for science. So if the party does not want a word to exist, it will not exist. And they use newspeak as a way to simplify and dumb down people. The less complex words that people think, the easier they'll be to control. The one example I can think of right now, which might sound dumb and sound crazy, are GIFs. Right? Like, obviously there's a lot of people in the comment sections that write out long paragraphs, but a lot of comment sections now are like GIFs, right? And people respond to like pictures, like with pictures. So it's like we're not even like speaking anymore. But again, that's a whole thing for later. So newspeak, doublespeak, and thought crime are like the big three ideas that Orwell talks about in this book of a way for the party to control people. So in the book, there's 3 mass states. Right? Countries do not exist anymore besides these 3. Oceania, where Winston lives, Eurasia, and East Asia. And there are 3 classes of people. There's the inner party, the outer party, and the proles. The proles make up, I think they said 85% of the population. Right? And then there's the outer party and the inner party. Winston is part of the outer party. So he doesn't have as many privileges as people of the inner party, but he is not a prole. The proles are, like, they portray him as trashy, trashy, terrible people. Not terrible, but like, they live in old rundown slums. They don't live in very good neighborhoods, but they do have more individual freedoms. Right? They're free to go where they want. They're free to drink, smoke, which people in the outer party, like Winston, are not allowed to do. Right? People that live in the outer party, such as Winston, don't have many individual freedoms. In this book, there is a telescreen, so a TV screen that's in your house. It's where you work. So you're always being watched. You can only drink party tonic, right? No. Oh, Victory Gin is what they call it. You can only drink gin that is given to you by the party. And sex is seen as a... hold on, I have that written. It's done for the party. Sex is done for the party. You can't just have sex with your wife. You have to have sex to have kids, and then to indoctrinate them into the party. Anything else, that's a crime. So, those are the 3 classes of people. Orwell says in this book that the power lies in the proles just because of the sheer massive numbers, but the party does such a good job at controlling them because they keep them in such a destitution in such a terrible condition that they have no means to revolt, and they can't revolt because they don't have the means to revolt, and they don't kill them all, because killing them all would spark a revolt, right? But keeping them in a shitty way of life, they won't revolt. They're just used to it by now. So what does Winston do, right? What does Winston do for work? Winston works for the Ministry of Truth. And there's 4 big ministries in this book. There's the Ministry of Truth, the Ministry of Love, the Ministry of Peace, and the Ministry of Plenty. As you could guess, those are all bullshit, right? Those are all contradictory. So the Ministry of Truth is propaganda. The Ministry of Love is law and torture. The Ministry of Peace is the war ministry. And the Ministry of the Plenty is economic rationing. So he works in the Ministry of Truth, where he rewrites history based on the present. He makes everything that the party had predicted in the past to become true. So if the party said years ago that they're in a war with East Asia, and then today they said Eurasia, Winston would have to receive paper and receive all the articles in all the newspapers about what the party said in the past, and he would have to rewrite it and say that the party originally said Eurasia, right? And then he would burn the paper. So basically what he would do is that, say if the party said 10 months ago that rations for food would be 50,000, whatever, but it turned out to be 30,000, Winston would receive all the newspapers and all the information of the party saying 50,000, and he'd rewrite it to say 30,000, and then he would burn all the newspaper, and it would cease to exist. Right? It would never have been a thought. So you can't go back and prove that the party was wrong. The party's always right. The reason the party's always right is because they control the present. What George Orwell famously says in this book, or a famous quote from this book, is, "He who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past." So the party controls the present. So they're able to take all the information and things that they say back, and they can take the information and they can burn it and get rid of it and redistribute it after it's fixed, and so it's always been true, and people don't question it, because thought crime, right? If you think against the party, if you don't accept what the party says, that's a crime, and you disappear. So Winston is obviously the main character of this book, and he's against the party. He's looking for people that are also against the party, but he has to be super careful about it, because, again, it's all crime, and he will get killed. But he sees this guy at work. His name is O'Brien, and he has a feeling that O'Brien is against the party. Then, later on in the book, he meets a girl named Julia. Julia also works for the Ministry of Truth. Winston hated her at first because I think he was jealous, or he wanted her, but he was never able to have her because Winston was married. But him and his wife didn't get along, so he was looking at Julia. And one day they bump into each other, and Julia drops a note and professes her love, and they meet up. They find some spot in the woods, and they make love, and he eventually, which is a crime, right? They're having sexual pleasure, and not for the betterment of the party, right? Not for the party. Then he rents a little apartment above this thrift store somewhere where the proles live. I forget exactly what it was called, but from a guy named Mr. Charrington. And so Winston and Julia would hang out at Mr. Charrington's room and get away from the party, where there was no telescreen, so they were alone. They could talk against the party, because Julia was against the party as well, right? She was young, rebellious against the party. So Winston found somebody that hated the party just as much as he did. Then Winston goes to O'Brien, the guy that he suspected at work was against the party. He went to him, and O'Brien admitted to him that he was part of the Brotherhood, and the Brotherhood was against the party, and they've been trying for years to overthrow the party. They celebrate in small victories by just like thinking and having sex against the party, like not for the party, like drinking, smoking, like writing books, right? Just writing, like small victories. And he tells Winston, he's like, it's not going to change in your lifetime, but you have to be, if you want to be part of the Brotherhood, you have to be willing to die. You have to be willing to kill innocent people, like all this crazy shit. And Winston's like, yes, I'll do it. Like, fuck the party. I hate these motherfuckers. And O'Brien's like, okay, in a few days, you're going to go to work with a briefcase. Someone's going to bump into you and leave another briefcase on the floor. You're going to take it. There's a book in there. You got to read this book and then come back to me. He said, okay. So I went to work, found the briefcase, took the book. I was reading the book by this guy named Emmanuel Goldstein. And Goldstein was a hated figure of the party. In the book, they have this thing called the 2 minutes of hate, where they're at work, I think, or they're somewhere. It's just every member of the outer party gathers around a big TV, and they play this guy on the screen talking who is the enemy of the party. The party makes him out to be an enemy because he sees through all the bullshit. And he's either dead, he was expelled, but it's just 2 minutes of people screaming at the screen, yelling like, fuck you, Goldstein, like you're a traitor, you're this, you're that. And watching the movie of it, I've seen the movie clip of it, it's like, it is really uneven. It's really unnerving, whatever the word that is. Because they're so passionate about hating this guy, and they start like saluting like the party, and it's just like, it's crazy to watch. But there's a 2 minute of hate for this Emmanuel Goldstein guy. And then Winston is reading his book. And that was probably my favorite part of the book, because it was almost like watching, not like watching, but like reading a YouTube video, right? Goldstein, or I guess Orwell through Goldstein, kind of just says point blank what he's thinking and how governments begin to control and what the party is doing, and he kind of talks about like economics and classes. I thought it was very interesting. But anyways, Winston and Julia are chilling in their apartment above Mr. Charrington's house. Then, out of nowhere, a telescreen pops out from behind the wall. Mr. Charrington was a part of the thought police, and he reported Winston and Julia. So they get separated, and they get brought to the Ministry of Love, where O'Brien is there, and O'Brien is also a member of the thought police. I don't know if I prefaced this before, but the thought police are the people that prosecute and basically make you, quote-unquote, disappear for thought crime. So you do not want to be caught and arrested by the thought police. So O'Brien goes on this tangent to Winston. He's torturing Winston at this point in the book. And he's saying that the goal of the party is to control reality. Reality is in the mind. O'Brien says that if the party says that 2 + 2 is 5, it must be believed. And people will believe it, because the party is so powerful. People are afraid of thought crime. People are going to be easy to control because of newspeak. O'Brien has this quote that says, "Imagine a boot being crushed on a skull forever." That's what he wants the party to be. That's what the party's goal is. And Winston's argument is that somebody will always know that it's BS, right? Just because the party says 2 + 2 is 5 doesn't make it true. Right? Even if you say it's 5 to please the party, some people will always know that it's 4. O'Brien then goes on to torture Winston and basically gets him to admit that 2 plus 2 is 5. The peak of this book, the ending of this book, has Winston admit that 2 plus 2 is 5. He does that. O'Brien does this by torturing him, by putting a mask over his head with like a rat in it. And it has like 2 compartments. He made the rat go closer, and he's like, Winston, admit to me right now that 2 plus 2 is 5. And Winston yells out, he's like, stop, please do this to anybody. Don't do it to me. Do it to Julia. So O'Brien got Winston to sell out Julia and to admit that 2 plus 2 is 5. And the only thing that Winston loved was Big Brother. The last line of this book says, he loves Big Brother. And I kind of saw the ending coming. I didn't really see how he was going to overthrow this government, right? It's not like a fantasy novel where he like starts a revolt and beats them. Like, in the end, he gets tortured and is made to love Big Brother. And he truly believes that 2 plus 2 is 5. That's the whole point. So Winston said that it's not true. You can't get people to truly believe that 2 plus 2 is 5 just because it's what you say. And then he gets tortured. And now he believes that 2 plus 2 is 5. He loves Big Brother. Now, the part of the book that I really liked also was going over how the 3 nations keep people in check. Right? So, the 3 nations, Oceania, Eurasia, and East Asia, they're constantly at war with each other. That's at least what Oceania says. Because who knows if it's true or not, right? Winston, they don't really say if it's true that they're actually at war. War is used as a reason to keep people in check, right? So it says the 3 nations are constantly at war, but they only fight over a small portion of land. The main reason for the war is not to gain land and conquest, it is to keep power. It's to keep people afraid, to create a common enemy to hate, dispense propaganda, and to burn resources. So all 3 states are identical in belief and practice. The increase of wealth has been the death of hierarchical societies, which is a quote in the book. The war exists to burn resources, to produce guns, and to create giant floating fortresses that serve no real use. They're burning production to stop that production from going towards improving the lives of people in the party. So in other words, they're burning resources so that people in the party don't get to use them, which keeps them in a state of destitution, which keeps them easier to control. And so they're not giving them more wealth, they're not giving them more money, they're keeping them in this destitute state that their lives suck, and they have to love the party, they have to worship the party, they have a common enemy, right? They love whatever the party says. They know they'll disappear if they go against the party, and they don't want to go against the party. Even if they know they're going to disappear, they love the party. So they've gotten such a control over these people that they don't know if the war is really happening. Winston's skeptical that the war is happening. And he even says that he knows that they bomb their own civilians, they kill their own civilians to make it seem like it's an attack from East Asia or Eurasia, right? But it's Oceania bombing their own people to keep them in check. And to say, oh, it was Eurasia. If you love the party, you're against East Asia. If you hate East Asia, you love the party, right? It's all just used to bring people together against a common enemy in the name of loving the party. Now, this is the part of the video where I want to talk about how it relates to modern day. And so I have this note. It's called 2084. Right? I know it's a very original title, right? Yeah. Listen. So, telescreens. And telescreens in 1984 are their TV in your house. It watches Winston and watches everybody at all times, and you can't turn it off. Those are Ring cameras. Right? Ring cameras surveil us outside, and you have your TV and your phone that surveils you inside. Right? If you have an Alexa It's listening to you at all times. It has to. Because when you say Alexa, it has to be listening. It doesn't matter that you don't say anything else. It doesn't automatically turn on. Like when it only hears Alexa. Like it has to be listening to hear you say Alexa. So everything that you say is being monitored. And everything I'm saying right now. I mean, on the computer there's a microphone. I'm talking to a microphone. My Xbox, my TV, right? Someone can watch me. Someone from the government can watch me, or the party. Right? I'm going to keep referring to it as the party because saying the government kind of, I don't know, freaks me out. I don't want them to think I'm planning something. Anyways, so ring camera surveillance outside, TV and phones, and Alexa's surveillance inside. Right? And like a lot of things are electric now. Like your thermostat is electric. That can be controlled. Your cars are electric. That can be controlled. If you listen to John Kiriakou, the former CIA agent, he says that the CIA can like control your car and like make you crash. It's like, unless you're doing something, unless like you're a criminal, like yeah, you shouldn't fear that, or like a political adversary. But it's just crazy that they can do that, and like you can't do anything about it, and you're still gonna get go on like throughout your day. Like that, right? I think hate speech can be decided by the government's own will at a certain point, right? Like saying that I hate the president, right, fits the same crime as I'm going to kill somebody. And there will be people who will defend the party for taking action for saying that I hate the president or whatever it is I say, right? That's sometimes that's against whoever's in power. That's all they need to have an excuse and to justify their actions of arresting me, right? So even if I say, whatever, like I hate this congressman, right? They could say they're like that's threatening, that's hate speech. We're gonna arrest you. You think you're gonna do something, and people on their side would be like, yeah, they're right, and that's the justification. That's all they need. And they're going to use social media to amplify their side, right? They even do that today. Right? Your social media and your algorithm is tailored to you. Right? So you see what you want to see, and they show you what they want to show you. Like they know you, and when they flood your For You page with things that they want you to see, they know what you want. And like subconsciously, eventually, like you're going to be thinking what you see. And so if they want you to, be on one side, they're going to keep showing you things that advocate their side. And you might even know it. Because you're going to be thinking like, yeah, like that makes sense. And like you're going to start to evolve. But it's because like the thing that started your evolution was them pushing things on you through social media. This is kind of out there. I know that this has been talked about in a while, which I think is a good thing. But Neuralink, dude, if you put fucking Neuralink in your head, you're a fucking idiot. I'm sorry. Like, if you put Neuralink in your head, you deserve to become a fucking robot. Like, I'm sorry. There's no good reason to accept Neuralink. I'm sorry. I don't care. Whatever, like, the pro Neuralink shit they spew is complete bullshit. That's just mind control. I'm sorry. AI can be used to frame people, right? If on a small scale, right? If I don't like somebody, AI is going to get good enough to a point where it's going to look indistinguishable from reality. So I can frame somebody for like robbing my house or like, taking something from me. And the government or the party can do that same thing, right? I mean, some people think they've been using AI for years, right? But AI is going to get to a point that it gets so good, it's going to be indistinguishable from reality, and they can use that to propel and make enemies. Right? In the book, it's war. And the same thing today is also war, but that's a point I have later that we'll talk about. But what if they make a common enemy of like somebody that hates whoever's in power, right? And then they use that, but it's completely fake. It's completely made up. It's just AI. Right? But it looks so real, and people believe it to be real. I mean, you see it all the time on Instagram. I mean, I'm sure on Facebook. You know, you get those, like the Facebook moms and dads that like believe the videos of dogs dancing. Like, no, that's real. It's like what? Like, you don't think that they would fall for like somebody murdering somebody with AI, somebody like committing a shooting or having a hate crime, right? It's very easy to make people believe that stuff. And AI, that's the scariest part of AI to me. Like, they could use it to frame people and make shit up. Constant war can turn neighbors into enemies, and enemies into skeptics. Right? Say, you know, we go to war with like Europe, right? And someone sees you wearing like a soccer jersey, you'd be like, "Are you a traitor? You must be a spy. I gotta call the police." Right? It seems crazy, but it's the same thing as 1984. Like, they're constantly at war. They're keeping people in check, and they're creating a common enemy. Like, we're at war with Iran right now. If you say that you're against the war with Iran, someone's, you know, there are going to be people that are against you. There's people that are for the war, and there are people that are against the war. And that's why they want you split. It's easy to control. Right? When you're split, and there's people, you're either for or against. And that's how it gets so polarized. Like, there's no like, whoa, it's a middle ground. No. It's either with the party's actions or you're against the party's actions. And if you're against the party's actions, then they're going to find some way to deal with you. Right? And I think at this point, history can be changed. Right? If all these things that I just listed become true, right, then they control the present. So they control the past. As Orwell says. He who controls the past controls the present. He can controls the... No. What was it? He who controls... Fuck. Hold on. Let me look. Let me go back. He who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past. So if all those things that I just said happens, then history can be changed. Right? They can destroy archives. They can change history books. And people will be too afraid by the threat of disappearance or death to go against them, right? Or just being arrested. And over time, people are going to take that history as truth. Because, say if they change it now, right? And then we're all too scared to go against the party, so we're going to just believe that it's true. And then we have kids, our kids are going to grow up and that's their reality, right? And so on and so forth. And and Winston in the book, right? There's paper, and he has to burn the paper. So what Orwell didn't even see or think about was the internet. You don't have to burn any paper. You don't need anybody to change it. You can just go on and change it. Like, kids have Chromebooks, and just the internet itself, all these big companies, they're all in bed with politicians. Like, they give them billions and millions and millions of dollars. So if it gets to a point where the party wants to control the information, it's on the internet. And the people that control the internet can just change the words. They can just change it to whoever it is, whatever they want it to be. And we can't do anything about it. We can't control the internet. Right? So, you know, when there's no Winston that's taking paper and taking books, all the books, and like recalling all the books and getting all the newspapers and rewriting it. It's just going to happen. They're just going to do it. Like, it's just going to pop up. If one day, if they have total control, and, you know, whoever it is says that, like, the war would be over in a year, and it's like year 3, and you look up how long did they say the war was going to be. They said 3 years. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, no. That's why physical media, I think, is important, even just like a little bit, because the internet is so easy to control, and it's so easy to change. It's so easy to change. But like books and magazines and stuff like that aren't, because it's on paper. And kids learning on screens and moving away from paper contributes to this too. Right? Education has become all digital, right? And screens and the internet, again, can be easily altered. Kids, they'll decline in motor skills, reading and writing. They already have. Like, the academic standards are already being lowered. So they're getting dumber. And when you're dumb, you're easy to control. It's the same thing as 1984. The proles are easy to control because they're dumb, they're trashy, right? And so when you have generations, every generation has gotten smarter. I think Gen Alpha was the first generation to test lower than the previous generation, which is crazy if you really think about it. So people are getting dumber and they're on screens and they're growing up on screens. Who knows, in the future, if this shit becomes true, the internet can be easily altered and they can tell people and kids whatever they want and they grow up to be truth. And not to mention that 23andMe and all these other like DNA sites have your DNA, and that Meta and all these apps have all your data, your interests, what you buy, what you like. They know you better than they know yourself. It's crazy. You'll talk about something and it shows up on your Instagram. That's not a coincidence. They hear you. Like, they listen to you. They know what you're saying. They know what you want. And people just don't care, which is I understand not caring because you don't want to freak yourself out, but at the same time I'm what the fuck? It's creepy. I don't get it. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm not a English major, and I've just started reading, so I want to preface that I'm not an expert. I definitely missed a lot of things. I probably missed a lot of nuances, and this video was not very structured. I was kind of just writing stuff down while I was at the gym, listening to these videos, and doing all that stuff. But I do like talking about these books, because I think it's very interesting. I've read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, Animal Farm by another Orwell, Fahrenheit 451, I think Ray Bradbury, Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-5. I've been reading a bunch. I'm currently reading The Stranger by Albert Camus, I think that's how you say his name, and Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. So I would like to make this a series of book reviews if you guys would like to keep seeing these and getting my opinions on it. But for now, please subscribe if you're coming over from MSP. What is good? And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, because I enjoyed talking about it. I've been meaning this for a while, I really have, and I'm really happy I finally got it done. But thank you. See you guys later. Peace.